In Genesis code, the change action lets you change game objects into other game objects. First, you need to specify an old object, and then you need to specify a new object. So the cylinder one is this one, and it's pointing towards that direction, whereas cylinder 2 is over here, and it's pointing the other way. I've already set up these two cylinders, and I've also set up two Genesis code components that will let me show you examples of how this change action can be used. So over here, the condition set to change one of these objects into the other object using after you press space. There you go. So see here, the script note, you can actually change that as well. You can put in whatever name you want. It acts kind of like a comment section, or you can think of it like naming your own script. It helps with organization and such. This one does the opposite effect. It changes the second cylinder into the first cylinder. See? So what actually happens in a change action is that it destroys the old object and places the new object exactly at the position of the old object. Sometimes you want it to keep the rotation of the old object, and sometimes you want it to keep the rotation of the new object. So you can set whichever rotation you want using this check mark here. So if you uncheck it, it's going to use the old rotation, but if you check it, it's going to use the new rotation. Let's see it in action. Let's say I want the cylinder 1 to change into cylinder 2, but keep the old rotation. Nothing happens, even though it actually changed into the other cylinder. Because it kept the rotation, it's as if nothing really happened. But you can see that there were changes in the hierarchy tab. Now, same thing here. The same principle will happen if you uncheck the box. So, depending on what you want it to do, sometimes you want it to use the new rotation or the old rotation, and you can specify that there. Now, what's interesting is that even if you check both, they still transform into the other object. So what happens in the change action is that it actually performs a create action and a destroy action. So what happens is that the old object gets destroyed, and a new object gets created at that position. So those are the basics of the change action. Alright. And this probability lets you set whether you want it to this probability is basically like how likely it is to change into the other object. There's like a 50% chance that it might turn into the other object right now. See? There you go. So it's a random probability. Sometimes one of them will switch, sometimes both of them will switch. That's pretty much how the change action works. I'll discuss other actions with you in future videos. So stay tuned.